On January 1st, one of the most watched movies on Netflix was the new documentary from Ryan Nicodemus and Joshua Fields Milburn, Less is Now. Together, the two of them are known as the Minimalists, and they remind us that
we never really stop to question what is essential, what is necessary, how much of this stuff is actually adding any value to my life.
The idea of minimalism itself was born in the art world and has grown to be an international movement of people who are seeking to simplify their lives, consume less, and walk through life leaving a smaller footprint along the way. As Joshua Becker tells us,
when we remove distractions from our lives, we can focus more time and money and energy on the things that matter most, however you want to define that.
He goes on to say that minimalism is the intentional promotion of the things we most value and the removal of anything that distracts us from it. I love that definition because it's an invitation for us to not only think about the things we value, but to work towards bringing our lives into alignment with our values, while simultaneously working to remove anything that gets in the way of that process. At its core, minimalism is seen to be a corrective to a culture that is obsessed with material possessions, faster cars, bigger homes, all forms of excess and burnout. One of the key questions a minimalist lifestyle asks is, how much is enough? This is a significant point of connection between minimalism and Christianity. It's not a new question. The 19th century preacher Charles Spurgeon said the following: "You say, if I had a little more, I should be very satisfied. You make a mistake. If you're not content with what you have, you would not be satisfied if it were doubled." How much is enough? When John the Baptist was preaching and preparing the way for Jesus, we're told that the crowds asked him, "What should we do then?" And John answered, "Anyone who has 2 shirts should share with the one who has none, and anyone who has food should do the same." Did he mean it? If so, how many extra clothes do you have in your closet that someone else could be getting benefit from right now, while you just keep it just in case, and someone else then is going without it? Again, how much is enough? The excesses of our culture are enormous. We live in a world where $32.5 billion is spent annually on perfume. That's more than the gross domestic product of over half the nations of the world. That's a little less than the $36 billion that Americans spend on pet food and treats for their pets on an annual basis. The US apparel industry generates about $12 billion a year. That's approximately 4 times the GDP of the West African nation of Sierra Leone. It equates to the average American family spending $1,700 a year on clothes. That's more money being spent on clothes in America than 25% of the world's population earns in a year. That's more than some of my friends make in Sierra Leone. And that makes it personal for me. So over the last few years, I've been working on paring back how much I own. And the more I pare back, the more I realize that I don't need as much as I used to think I did. Last year in January, I made a 10-day trip back home to Belfast with only a small carry-on. And it struck me at the time that if I could get all I needed for 10 days into a small carry-on case, then I probably didn't need, with the emphasis being on the word need, much more than that. This past year has proved to be a great testing ground for what I actually need, as opposed to what I would like, what would be good to have, and what I hold on to for a just-in-case moment. Turns out that I don't need very much at all. And that's really a good thing for me to know. Because as a Christian, I've made a commitment to follow the way of Jesus in the world. And as a pastor, I've also made a commitment to work to lead others in the way of Jesus. I've reached a point where my family has started to refer to me as a monk, as I wear the same basic clothes every day and I like to sit in a chair and read a book under a lamp in the evening. And I'm fine with that. I do believe that almost everyone who calls themselves a Christian ought to be living a simpler or more minimalist life. And I say that because of our calling as Christians to serve the world. Every Christian ought to be a minimalist. In Luke 12, we find Jesus saying to the crowd, "Watch out! Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." Then he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But God said to him, "You fool! This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" Did you know that the United States spends about $24 billion a year on storage facilities for all the stuff we can't fit into our homes? The lesson here should be obvious. Indeed, Jesus would also tell us that no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. This is an either-or proposition that Jesus offers us. For the last few weeks, I've had the words of John from his first letter to the church rattling around in my head. 1 John 3:16 through 18. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need, but closes their heart to them, how can the love of God be in that person? Dear children, let us not love with words or speech, but with actions and in truth. What material possessions are you holding on to that you are failing to let go of in order to help someone in need? Why don't you take a little time and just fill a few bags and drop them off at Goodwill or the Salvation Army? Or if you have gently used professional clothes, drop them off at Ready for Success or another place that helps low-income folks get the professional clothing they need to find work. Don't hoard it for yourself, just in case. How much do you really need? Christians should be minimalists because the gospel calls us to share what we have with people in need. Can we learn to live more simply so others may simply live?
What if you